In the early years of World War II, Adolf Hitler seemed unstoppable. His armies moved faster than anyone thought possible. One country after another collapsed under the power of Germany's blitzkrieg. But behind these early victories were decisions, dangerous decisions, strategic mistakes that would slowly turn Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year empire into total destruction. Today, we explore Hitler's biggest strategic mistakes and how they led Nazi Germany to defeat.
One of Adolf Hitler's greatest strategic mistakes was opening too many fronts at the same time. In the early stages of World War II, Germany achieved stunning victories by focusing its military power on a single objective. Poland was defeated in a matter of weeks. France, considered one of the strongest armies in Europe, collapsed in just 6 weeks. These successes created a dangerous illusion. Hitler began to believe that Germany was unstoppable. Instead of securing peace or consolidating control over conquered territories, he chose expansion. Britain remained unconquered in the West. North Africa became another battlefield. And in 1941, Hitler opened a massive new front in the East against the Soviet Union. Soon, German forces were spread across thousands of kilometers, from the Atlantic coast to the outskirts of Moscow. This overstretch placed enormous pressure on Germany's military resources. Fuel, ammunition, food, and reinforcements had to be divided between multiple fronts. The German army was powerful, but it was not limitless. History had already delivered a clear warning. During World War I, Germany had lost after fighting a prolonged multi-front war. Yet Hitler ignored this lesson. As the war dragged on, Germany could no longer concentrate its strength where it mattered most. Every new enemy reduced Germany's ability to win decisively. By choosing to fight everyone at once, Hitler ensured that Germany would eventually be exhausted, surrounded, and defeated. In June 1941, Adolf Hitler made one of the most fatal decisions of World War II. He launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. It was the largest military operation in human history. More than 3 million German soldiers crossed the eastern border, supported by thousands of tanks, aircraft, and artillery guns. At first, the invasion appeared to be a success. German forces advanced hundreds of kilometers. Entire Soviet armies were surrounded and destroyed. Millions of prisoners were taken. Hitler believed victory was inevitable. But this confidence was dangerously misplaced. Hitler underestimated the Soviet Union in 3 critical ways. First, he underestimated Soviet manpower. The Red Army suffered massive losses, yet new divisions continued to appear. Second, he underestimated Soviet industry. Factories were dismantled and moved east, beyond the reach of German bombers. Within months, the Soviet Union was producing tanks and weapons in enormous numbers. And third, Hitler underestimated geography and climate. The vast distances of the Soviet Union stretched German supply lines to the breaking point. Fuel ran short, ammunition became scarce, food deliveries failed to arrive on time. As autumn turned into winter, German soldiers found themselves unprepared. There were not enough winter uniforms, vehicles froze, weapons malfunctioned. Outside Moscow, the German advance finally stopped. Operation Barbarossa was supposed to end the war in the East. Instead, it created a conflict Germany could never win. From this moment on, Nazi Germany was locked in a war of attrition, a war it was not prepared to
to fight.
As the war dragged on, Adolf Hitler became increasingly isolated from reality. In the early years, he had trusted professional military commanders, men with decades of battlefield experience. But after early successes, Hitler became convinced that his instincts were superior to military expertise. He began to interfere directly in battlefield decisions. Generals were no longer allowed to adapt to changing conditions. Orders came from Hitler himself, often from hundreds of kilometers away. Experienced commanders warned him. They requested tactical retreats. They asked for flexible defensive positions. Hitler refused. In his view, retreat was a sign of weakness. He believed that holding ground at all costs would lead to victory. This obsession proved disastrous. Nowhere was this more evident than at Stalingrad. In late 1942, German forces advanced deep into the city. Street by street, building by building, the fighting turned into brutal close-quarters combat. When Soviet forces launched a massive counteroffensive, German commanders urged a breakout. They could still escape. Hitler said no. He ordered the Sixth Army to hold its position. Supplies would be delivered by air, he promised, but the airlift failed. Food ran out. Ammunition disappeared. Winter tightened its grip. Surrounded and starving, over 300,000 German soldiers were trapped. In February 1943, the Sixth Army surrendered. It was one of the most devastating defeats in German military history. From that moment on, Hitler's refusal to listen sealed Germany's fate.
In December 1941, Adolf Hitler made one of the most reckless decisions of the entire war. After Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, Hitler declared war on the United States. He was not required to do so. Germany and the United States were not yet officially at war, but Hitler believed America was weak. He saw the United States as a divided nation, focused on business and comfort, not on sacrifice and total war. This was a catastrophic misjudgment. The United States was not just another enemy, it was an industrial superpower. American factories could produce weapons on a scale Germany could never match. Thousands of aircraft, tens of thousands of tanks, and millions of tons of supplies. And they kept coming, month after month, year after year. By declaring war, Hitler unified American public opinion overnight. Any remaining hesitation disappeared. The United States mobilized its economy, its workforce, and its military power. American troops soon arrived in Europe. American ships dominated the Atlantic. American bombers filled the skies over Germany. Germany now faced an enemy with limitless resources, protected by two oceans, and capable of fighting a long war. Hitler believed time was on his side. In reality, time now worked against him. The longer the war continued, the stronger the United States became. This decision ensured that Germany would be outproduced, outnumbered, and eventually destroyed. From December 1941 onward, Germany's defeat was no longer a question of if, but when.
Remain neutral in thought as well. Even a neutral has a right to take a stand.
One of the most destructive elements of Adolf Hitler's strategy was not military at all. It was ideology. Hitler did not view the war as a conflict between nations, but as a racial and ideological crusade. This belief shaped every major decision in the East. As German forces advanced into Eastern Europe, they were not seen as liberators, they were seen as occupiers. Nazi racial policies treated entire populations as enemies. Local communities were terrorized rather than persuaded. This created resistance instead of cooperation. In many regions, anti-Soviet sentiment already existed. Some populations initially welcomed German forces, but Nazi brutality quickly destroyed any chance of alliance. Forced labor, mass executions, and collective punishment became standard policy. As a result, partisan movements spread across occupied territories. Railways were sabotaged, supply convoys were ambushed, communication lines were destroyed. To suppress this resistance, Germany was forced to deploy hundreds of thousands of troops behind the front lines. These soldiers were no longer fighting the main enemy. They were tied down in endless security operations. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union exploited this mistake. Partisans gathered intelligence, disrupted German logistics, and weakened the German war effort from within. Hitler believed ideology would bring control. Instead, it created chaos. Resources were wasted, manpower was drained. The war became harder to fight with every passing month. By placing ideology above strategy, Hitler turned potential allies into permanent enemies. And in total war, that mistake proved fatal.
Anymore Nazi philosophy. The Allied advance.
As the war turned against Germany, Adolf Hitler became increasingly obsessed with technology. He believed that advanced weapons, so-called wonder weapons, could reverse Germany's fortunes. These weapons were impressive on paper. Jet-powered aircraft, long-range rockets, heavily armored super tanks. But modern war is not won by innovation alone. It is won by reliability, logistics, and mass production. Germany's most famous wonder weapon, the V-2 rocket, was the first ballistic missile in history. It traveled faster than the speed of sound. It could not be intercepted. Yet, despite its technological brilliance, the V-2 had almost no strategic impact. It was wildly expensive. Each launch consumed resources Germany desperately needed elsewhere. The rockets terrorized civilian populations, but they did not destroy factories, ports, or armies. At the same time, Germany introduced the world's first operational jet fighter, the Messerschmitt Me-262. It was faster than any Allied aircraft. It could dominate the skies. But Hitler insisted it be used as a bomber, not as a fighter. This delayed its deployment, reduced its effectiveness, and squandered its potential. Other projects followed the same pattern. The Tiger and King Tiger tanks were powerful, but mechanically unreliable. They consumed enormous amounts of fuel. They broke down frequently, and they were produced in small numbers. Meanwhile, the Allies focused on simplicity. The American Sherman tank, the Soviet T-34. Not perfect, but easy to repair, easy to produce, and available in overwhelming numbers. While Germany chased technological miracles, the Allies built armies that could be replaced and reinforced endlessly. Hitler believed one decisive weapon would change the war. But no single invention could overcome broken logistics, fuel shortages, and constant Allied bombing. By investing in spectacle instead of sustainability, Germany wasted precious time and resources. The wonder weapons did not save the Reich. They only delayed the inevitable. In the end, technology could not compensate for strategic failure. Hitler did not lose the war because Germany lacked strength. He lost because of strategic arrogance, ideological blindness, and refusal to adapt. Every major mistake compounded the next, until defeat became inevitable. The fall of Nazi Germany stands as a warning. Even the most powerful forces can collapse when leadership fails. History remembers not only Hitler's rise, but the consequences of his mistakes. Like, comment, and subscribe for more story.